Welcome back to Redskins Chronicles. I'm Amanda Mitchell, joined by Redskins historian Mike Richmond.
Thank you.
And one of the finest linebackers to play the game for the Washington Redskins, Rich Milot. Rich, thanks for joining us today.
Nice to be here.
Nice to see you. What have you been up to since last time we saw you? I believe we saw you at some of the Redskins 80th events.
Not too much. I have a daughter plays soccer. Been doing a lot of that stuff with her. I'm a tax advisor, so that's a busy time in the winter time for me to do that. But nothing else. Really, mostly family stuff. The kids. I don't know if you've ever had kids play soccer. It consumes a lot of time.
Well, speaking of kids, we want to hear about your early years and how you got into the great game of football. Talk to me about being raised in Coriopolis, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is a huge football town. Who got you into the game?
Not actually getting me into the game. I was just a huge Baltimore Colt fan back in the day. I was the Johnny Unitas era, and I remember sitting in the car just listening to it, but really never did much. I actually grew up in the eastern part of Pennsylvania around Allentown, and then I moved to Pittsburgh. Went out for football when I was in the 9th grade, never played until probably the last game. I was 6'5", almost at that time, 145 pounds, and they had me an offensive and defensive line.
So then you only played 1 year as a lineman. What caught a guy like Joe Paterno's attention? That was linebacker university. How did he know?
I actually went to Penn State as a running back.
Okay.
And I played in the Big 33 as a running back, and really a tall, skinny running back. But I think I averaged 10 or 11 yards a carry my senior year. So I had some pretty good games. And so that's where they got me. I think what was funny was I was recruited both by Ohio State and Penn State. Ohio State, the guy that recruited me was Joe Bugel. And they wanted me to play what they call a monster linebacker. And believe it or not, that's what I ended up at Penn State, playing that type of linebacker. So if I would have gone there, I would have played that for 4 years. Penn State only played it 1 year. So.
And then you were part of that 1979 draft. That's actually one of the greatest drafts in Redskins history, but it gets overlooked because of 1964 and 81. But you came in.
You know, I think it's the best draft the Redskins ever had. I'm going to be very honest with that. Donnie Warren was a fourth round pick. He was the first. Donnie played, 15 years? I was the 7th round pick. I played 9. Neil Oakwitz. I never remember whether Neil or Monty was drafted, but I think, yeah, Monty was drafted in the 12th round. Monty played, 17, 18 years?
3 Super Bowls.
Neil came in as a free agent, played 13 years. I mean, those were just the only picks we really had that year. And we had a couple free agents come in, but I mean, those were just great. And then you said the next year and the next year after that. I think Bobby Beathard did a great job with picking the guys back in the day.
You were a career Redskin. Talk to me about all the years, the coaches that you saw.
You know, the guy that made the biggest impact on me was Larry Peccatello. Jack Pardee was the first coach, and quite honestly, the only negative I had about Jack, I really liked him. I didn't think he had a great staff, and we really didn't even have a linebacker coach at that time. Jack would coach us, but he was off being the head coach. And quite honestly, I think if it wasn't for Larry Peccatello, I don't think I would have been able to play as long as I did.
I was just going to ask you about Petitbon as a defensive coordinator. So did he teach you a lot of fundamentals as well?
Well, Richie never taught us the fundamentals because he was more with the defensive backs. But I liked the way we played. We were very aggressive, and that's the way Richie liked to play. And we did a lot of things they don't do now. We were a man-to-man team. We did a lot of man-to-man. I always hear on TV how the linebackers can't cover the tight ends. That's all we did. Monty had the linebackers on just about every play. I mean, the tight ends on just about every play. So we did a lot of that, and I just loved that defense back then. They don't play anything like it now.
Going back to the 82 season, we had the Eagles this week, and I wanted to ask you about the season opener, 1982. It has to be one of the biggest wins in the Joe Gibbs era, 37-34 Redskins over the Eagles. Can you talk about that game and how important it was to you guys?
I don't think we realized how important it was at that time. For me personally, I remember, I remember making plays personally that I didn't think I could make, and I keep going back to the coaching at that time. And but I don't think we really realized. I don't think most people realize, but we were back in the preseason. There were a lot of newspaper people saying that we wouldn't win a game. So, and but you know, it just built on itself, and it's kind of hard to think back to those games, to be honest with you.
So you mentioned 1985 as quite possibly your favorite year as a Redskin. We have all the tapes from that year, so let's take a look at some of the footage from 1985.
The 80s also witnessed John Riggins become the NFL's 4th all-time leading rusher and 2nd all-time leading touchdown scorer. while George Rogers rushed for a single-game team record 206 yards in 1985. While the offenses were flashy, the defenses were nasty. Under Gibbs, Washington has consistently ranked among pro football's best defenses versus both the pass and run. The Redskins have made a lasting impression in the 80s, playing incredible games, such as the 1982 NFC Championship.
Welcome back to Redskins Chronicles. We're joined by Rich Milot. Now, during the break, Rich let me know that 1985 was not the most fun season as a Washington Redskin.
I'll be honest with you, they were all fun.
Yeah.
It was just the one I thought I played better. The fun ones when you go all the way and go to the Super Bowl, but and I think we got stopped by the Bears that year, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not totally, but honestly, we had a great group of guys. There's pictures up now about the days we went down to Dallas and in fatigues. You don't see anybody doing anything like that. And it was good that we had a head coach that allowed us to do that stuff and knew the importance of guys getting together and having a good time also.
You had guys like Charles Mann and Darryl Green. Talk to me about some of your teammates that were inspirations to you and friends.
Probably the friends that I had were Mark Murphy, Neil Okowitz, Curtis Jordan. Those were the type of guys that I hung out with. And it was just a fun group. I think Monty Coleman and Mel Kaufman, we just seemed to all hang out together. Raven Caldwell, I know Raven was almost a different era, but he became a good friend of ours. Pete Cronin too. I can't forget Pete. Pete was probably the funniest guy on the team. Now he never gets credit. You hear all about John's antics. Pete was the funniest guy on the team. And you can go back to the 80s, and I can't tell you some of the stuff that he did.
Joe Gibbs does talk about the unheralded players, such as Larry Kubin and Pete Cronin, as being so instrumental to the team's success during that era. They were guys who kind of slipped under the radar.
Those two guys, but there was a guy named Otis Wansley, and I don't think most people remember Otis. To this day, think he was one of the best special team players that I'd ever seen play. Tough guy. And when I hear all the other great specials, I never hear his name mentioned. And me being there with him for so long, he's the guy that sticks out there. Really, really made a lot of plays, especially special team. But I think all of the guys, we had very few guys that were, we played very good as a team. So there were a lot of situations where guys like Monty Coleman, Monty could probably rush the quarterback and get 15, 20 sacks a game. I mean, he was that quick off the ball. But he was in coverage a lot. So we all did things that maybe didn't fit our strengths that much, but it was all a team game.
Seems like you were such a unit. Did you have any pregame rituals or superstitions that you all took?
No, I really don't. But this last year's, now I'm going into last year's Redskin game. That's the first Redskin team that I thought was made and built by the same type of players. They seemed like the type of guys, very few of them were in it for themselves. And honestly, it was the first time that I really got excited about a team. Same type of character guys, I think, that we had back in the 80s. So if they can all stay healthy, I think they're going to do very well.
Do you consider yourself a Redskins fan?
Yeah, I do consider myself a Redskin fan. I think everybody would admit to you, honestly, when they initially go out, you stay away from it for a while. I noticed I missed things in phases. The very first phase was like you miss your friends. And then you miss the limelight, maybe that a little bit, and then you miss the game. And I got to the point where I start missing the game. And I'm probably a bigger Redskin fan now than I was in the past.
How thrilled were you with the Redskins winning the NFC East last year?
It wasn't just that they won it, it was how they won it, the character that the guys showed on the field. They were a tough team. And again, it was hard to pick out, well, other than the quarterback, it's hard to pick out the stars of the team. All the guys seemed to play very, very, very well together. That's the type of team that wins it for you.
Rich, talk to us more about some of the current linebackers that play the game.
The actual current linebackers are so much different than when we played back in the game. It's hard for me really to evaluate them. Most of the outside guys are more pass rushers than they are linebackers. And I can't even imagine playing an inside on a 3-4. I don't think we were big enough in our era to do that. These guys are all 260. They have to take on guards. And we played a 4-3. You were pretty protected. Because actually, in my day, I played on the outside, and on passing downs, I actually moved into the middle. There are some great linebackers, and again, but most of them are great pass rushers. I think that's the way that they evaluate linebackers nowadays.
So what's your best advice for a young linebacker coming up into the NFL right now?
I think it's learn the game, get a good coach to teach you the game. It makes it so much easier for you. And once you start getting older, if you've got the fundamentals down, that's pretty much any sport. And everybody gets older, so you can always rely on those fundamentals. And speed and quickness are more than, I tell the little kids, I see a lot of little kids, they want to play football at 5, 6. I say, get into a sport that helps you with your speed and quickness, because that's really what the game is now.